Have you ever waited so long for something that you began to wonder if God even heard you? Prayed until your voice went quiet, believed until your hope felt thin, and still nothing. What if I told you that the silence wasn't a sign of God's absence, but a setup for something so divine, so perfectly timed that when it arrives, it won't just answer your prayer, it'll bring you to your knees in tears. Not tears of sorrow, but of holy, overwhelming awe. What feels delayed to us is often divinely scheduled in ways we cannot begin to grasp. God's timing is not defined by hours, minutes, or even years. It is not framed within our calendar, bound expectations, or our desperate pleas for immediacy. We are creatures of time, constantly watching it, fearing it, chasing it. But God stands outside it. He is not late because he cannot be late. He is the author of time, not its prisoner. And so, when we look around and see no signs of movement, when we pray and knock and cry but hear nothing back, our limited understanding concludes that heaven has paused. But it has not. It is simply operating in a rhythm far too vast and holy for our anxious hearts to interpret. The tension between God's sovereignty and our human impatience is one of the most trying aspects of faith. We want our answers when our emotions are raw and our minds are spinning. We want doors to open when we're tired of waiting outside. But the truth is, our view of readiness is often distorted by emotion. We assume that if we feel ready, we are ready. But readiness in God's sight is not based on desire or desperation. It is based on capacity. He sees what we cannot. What lies ahead, what could break us if it came too soon. What needs to grow in us before the blessing can be safely given. We interpret waiting as being overlooked, forgotten, perhaps even unloved. But the deeper truth is that delay is a form of protection. It is divine kindness disguised as silence. God is not ignoring us. He is shielding us from versions of our future that would have harmed us if given prematurely. Like a gardener who knows the precise moment a flower should bloom, he knows when the time is ripe. Too early, and the petals fall apart. Too late, and the chance fades. But at the perfect moment, the bloom appears, full of color and strength. In our impatience, we forget that time is a tool in God's hands, not an obstacle. He uses time the way an artist uses shadows, adding dimension, perspective, depth. What we call delay, God calls design. Each passing day, each silent season is filled with unseen preparation. The pieces are moving behind the curtain. People are being positioned. Lessons are being taught. Strength is being forged in secret. All of it is necessary. All of it is purposeful. Often, our cries echo from a place of pain. But the pain is not always from the absence of the blessing. It's from the presence of uncertainty. We don't just mourn the thing we haven't received, we mourn the not knowings. When? This is where faith is tested at its core. Can we trust a God whose timing we do not understand? Can we believe that He is good when the wait grows long and the silence grows loud? That is where real trust is born, not in the fulfillment, but in the waiting. When nothing changes on the outside, yet we still choose to believe that He is working, we are stepping into deeper faith than before. God does not rush. He is never driven by panic or pressured by the urgency we feel. He moves with intentionality and mercy. If He says, "Not yet," it is not because He delights in withholding, but because He delights in giving what is best when it is best. And sometimes What is best is hidden in timing that appears to be off, but is actually perfectly aligned with heaven's clock. The beauty of it is this: when his time does arrive, it often makes sense of everything that came before. The silence, the tears, the confusion, they all fall into place like puzzle pieces. The long wait reveals its reason. The delayed promise arrives with such precision and power that it overwhelms us, not just with joy, but with understanding. We see then, in hindsight, what we could not see while we waited, and it humbles us. It makes us cry, not just from relief, but from reverence. We realize he had never left us, never forgotten us, never delayed for the sake of delay. It was all love. Every moment, every pause, every unanswered prayer. It was all part of a story far bigger and more beautiful than we imagined. The waiting season is unlike any other in the life of a believer. It is not simply a gap between prayers and answers. It is the place where the soul is refined, reshaped, and redefined. In waiting, something deeper than patience is cultivated. We are not merely learning how to pass time. We are being molded by it, like a sculptor who stands before an unshaped stone. God takes the raw material of who we are and begins to chip away at everything that cannot go with us into the next season. This chiseling is quiet. It is slow, but it is intentional. Most people assume the miracle is the destination, the answered prayer, the open door. But the true miracle often begins in the process of becoming. It is in waiting that pride is softened, that selfishness is confronted, that illusions are stripped away. God uses silence to carve space within us, a space where deeper trust can be built, where pure motives can rise to the surface, where the heart is made ready for a blessing that won't destroy it. We often pray for breakthroughs without realizing that the very thing blocking the blessing is our own unrefined character. And so, the waiting becomes a furnace where impurities are burned, not to punish, but to purify. When nothing changes on the outside, everything is changing within. But we often resist this inner work because we are too focused on what is not happening. We want to escape the waiting room as quickly as possible. We want shortcuts, signs, and solutions. But God's methods are different. He does not rush the sculpting of a soul. He takes his time, not because he's unaware of our cries, but because he knows what kind of person we must become to carry the weight of his promise. Growth in the waiting season is subtle. It is like the slow strengthening of roots underground. No one sees it. There's no applause, but it's vital. Without strong roots, the tree will topple when the winds come. Likewise, if we are not grounded deeply in humility, faith, and endurance, the very blessing we long for could crush us under its weight. We are being prepared, not punished. God is not being cruel. He is being careful. In the waiting, we discover parts of ourselves we didn't know were there. Weaknesses rise to the surface: impatience, anger, fear, doubt. These things do not come to shame us, but to be dealt with. God reveals them not to condemn, but to heal. We cry out for him to move externally, but he is more interested in moving internally. The inner transformation must come first. Otherwise, the outward provision would be hollow, even harmful. There's something sacred about the stillness of waiting. It teaches us to listen differently, to pray differently. Desperation shifts into devotion. Instead of begging for an answer, we begin to seek the answer himself. We stop asking, "When will this end?" and begin asking, What are you teaching me in this? That shift is not small. It is the sign of a soul being sculpted. God shapes us in ways we don't immediately appreciate. He doesn't simply remove what's harmful. He removes what's unnecessary. He chisels off distractions, false identities, misguided dreams. He clears away all the noise until we stand before Him as we truly are, surrendered, raw, dependent. And only then are we ready to carry what He has planned. The pain of being shaped is not from the absence of answers, but from the friction between who we are and who we are becoming. Growth always involves tension. Something in us must stretch, must crack, must release. This is not weakness, it is transformation. The waiting season is not a holding cell, it is a workshop. And God is the master craftsman, fully invested in the fine details of your soul. So when you feel stuck, remember that you are not stuck, you are being sculpted. The world may not see your progress, but heaven does. God sees the strength forming in your silence, the wisdom forming in your stillness, the purity forming in your pain. And when the time is right, the shaping will give way to showing. What has been formed in secret will be revealed in glory. But it is in the wait that the masterpiece begins. Tears are often seen as signs of pain, grief, or weakness. We cry when life wounds us, when we lose something, when we feel forgotten or broken. But there is a different kind of tear that does not come from sorrow. It comes from awe. It flows not from despair, but from the overwhelming realization that something far greater has been at work behind the scenes all along. When God's timing finally arrives, and the pieces come together in ways we never imagined, the cry that escapes is not the cry of suffering, but of stunned, reverent joy. It is the cry that rises when divine timing meets human struggle, and reveals the hidden thread of purpose that ran through it all. We often endure long seasons where it feels like our prayers are unanswered. Doors remain closed. Silence fills the space where we begged for a word, and time seems to mock our faith. We hold on to promises that feel like distant dreams and wonder if we misheard or misunderstood. But what we fail to see in those moments is that the delay is not denial. It is preparation. It is the orchestration of something far more intricate than our limited view allows. God is weaving people, places, timing, and transformation together in a way that no human hand could manage. And when that moment of alignment comes, when everything that once felt scattered suddenly fits together like a perfect mosaic, it hits us with such force that our emotions can no longer be held back. There is something profoundly moving about seeing that God really was listening all along. That while we were falling apart, He was building. That while we were waiting, He was working. We see then that the silence was never absence. It was reverent stillness, a pause filled not with neglect, but with holy purpose. And when the curtain is finally drawn back, and we witness the fulfillment of what we once only hoped for, it is too much for words. Our soul responds the only way it can, with tears. These tears are different. They are heavy with wonder, soaked in gratitude, and rich with understanding. They come because we realize the wait was not just about timing, it was about becoming. We didn't just wait for something to happen, we were changed by the waiting. The person who receives the promise is not the same person who asked for it. There is growth, depth, and maturity that only time and tension could have developed. And so, When the breakthrough arrives, we cry not only for what has come, but for what it cost. For the nights we spent in confusion, for the faith it took to keep believing, for the battles we fought in silence. These are not cries of regret or resentment. They are sacred. They are the soul's response to grace that has finally been seen with clarity. We cry because we are undone, not by pain, but by the magnitude of God's faithfulness. To be seen, remembered, and answered in such a divine and precise way moves something in the deepest parts of us. It humbles us. It silences our doubts. It restores our weary hearts. There is also an element of holy fear that comes in those moments. Not fear as in terror, but fear as in reverence. We suddenly see how powerful God is, how wise He is, how intimately involved He has been the entire time. We cry because we realize we were never alone, never abandoned. We cry because the story we doubted was being written with greater love than we knew how to recognize. And now, as it unfolds before us, we can hardly believe we get to be part of something so beautiful. When God's appointed time arrives, when the season changes and the promise appears, it's not just the fulfillment that breaks us. It's the awareness that He never left, that He was working in layers we couldn't see, with care we didn't deserve, and with timing more perfect than our minds could grasp. The tears that come are proof that our hearts have touched something eternal. They are the overflowing of a soul that has seen the fingerprints of God all over its story. So when you cry in that moment, do not hold back. Let the tears fall. They are not a sign of weakness, but of awakening. They are the evidence of a faith that endured the silence and now stands before the promise. And in that sacred flood of emotion, you will feel heaven kiss the earth in your story. In the quiet moments when nothing seems to be moving, when prayers echo back with no reply, when life feels suspended between hope and disappointment, the human heart often assumes the worst. We interpret God's silence as His absence. We believe that if we cannot see Him working, then surely He is not. But that is a false conclusion born from a shallow understanding of divine presence. Silence is not the absence of God, it is often the space where His deepest work is unfolding. Like a seed planted beneath the soil, the most important growth happens in the dark, out of sight. Just because you can't see the roots growing does not mean they are not stretching deeper, strengthening, preparing for what is to come. God is not a performer working under the pressure of an audience. He doesn't owe us updates or glimpses behind the curtain. His work is often veiled, not to punish us, but to protect the process. There are things He is arranging, refining, and preserving that would be ruined if revealed too soon. He is not absent in the shadows. He is busy. He is moving people into position, opening doors in places you don't yet see, changing hearts that intersect with your future, and guiding circumstances into divine alignment. The silence is not void, it is orchestration. Our struggle is that we are so tied to what we can perceive. If we can't see progress, we assume there isn't any. We want results that are visible, measurable, tangible. But God operates on a different wavelength. He sees the whole picture while we see only fragments. What looks like a standstill may actually be a redirection. What feels like a closed door might be the shielding of a trap we didn't know was waiting. God doesn't simply move things forward, He moves them wisely. and sometimes that wisdom means delay, detour, or stillness. Think of the times in life when you later realized the no was a gift, the not yet was mercy, and the silence was sacred space where you were changed more than you knew. In the moment, it didn't feel holy. It felt like abandonment. But now you see what he was doing. You see how his hand was on everything, even the parts that made no sense. That realization doesn't come in the moment of silence. It comes after. But faith is learning to believe it even when the curtain has not yet been drawn back. God's silence is not a punishment. It is often a preparation. We are not always ready for what we are asking for. We think we are, but we carry fears, expectations, and immaturity that would crush the blessing or distort it. So he waits, not cruelly, but kindly. And while we wait, he works. Not always on the outside. Often, his work is in the hidden parts of our own heart. He is strengthening trust, building resilience, purifying motives. The season of silence becomes a season of shaping. The shadows are not a sign that God has withdrawn. In fact, some of his most powerful work is done in those very places. The shadows are where the soul learns to walk by faith and not by sight. They are where we come to know him, not just as the giver of blessings, but as the companion of our becoming. It is easy to feel close to God when everything is clear and moving forward, but it is in the darkness where trust becomes real. When you can't trace his hand, and you choose to trust his heart, that is where intimacy with God is forged. He is not ignoring your prayers. He is not deaf to your cries. He has not missed a single sleepless night or silent tear. He is simply working in dimensions you cannot see. You are on the front side of the tapestry, and all you can see is a tangled mess of threads. But on the other side, he is weaving beauty and purpose. The pattern is not visible yet, but it is being formed with care. In time, what is hidden will be revealed. What has been worked on in secret will come to light, and when it does, you will understand why it had to take so long, why it had to be so quiet, and why it felt so hidden. But for now, trust that the shadows are not empty. God is in them, moving with silent precision, working out a plan that will one day leave you speechless in its perfection. When we ask God for something, healing, breakthrough, direction, provision, we often imagine the answer arriving like a package, wrapped and delivered exactly as we expect. We fix our eyes on the outcome, assuming that the end goal is simply receiving what we asked for. But God doesn't operate with such narrow purpose. His aim is not just to give us things. His aim is to transform us through the very journey of waiting, trusting, surrendering, and growing. When his timing finally brings the promise to pass, the greatest gift is not what's in our hands, but who we've become in the process. The true fulfillment of a promise is not just an event, it's a transformation. God always has two intentions. When he makes a promise, one is what he plans to give us, and the other is what he plans to do within us. We often become so focused on the external that we overlook the internal. But the internal change is where the real miracle happens. The longer the wait, the more opportunity for pride to be humbled, faith to be matured, and vision to be purified. The person who receives the promise is rarely the same person who first prayed for it. Something changes in the middle. That middle space, the waiting, the questioning, the pressing forward in silence, is not empty time. It is divine formation. There are things we ask for that we simply are not ready to carry. Not because we are bad or incapable, but because God knows the weight of the blessing, and He will not crush us with it. He knows what kind of strength, character, and spiritual awareness it will take to handle what we long for. If He gave it too soon, we might waste it, misuse it, or mistake it for something we earned. But when it comes after the refining, we no longer hold it as a prize. We hold it as a trust. We see it not as a reward for surviving, but as the fruit of deep surrender. The transformation is subtle, and it often happens without our awareness. One day, we realize we don't pray the same way we used to. We don't panic like we once did. We don't see others through the same lens of comparison or jealousy. We've grown. We've shed layers we didn't know were weighing us down. We've become people who can carry the thing we once could only chase. That shift is not accidental. It's the direct result of God's timing. He didn't just delay for the sake of delay. He delayed to allow transformation to occur, to allow your roots to grow deep enough to sustain what was coming. Sometimes, we even discover that what we once prayed for is no longer what we desire most. We begin to ask not for something to come, but for God to be present, no matter what comes. That shift is evidence that the waiting has reshaped our hearts. When the prayer becomes less about outcomes and more about alignment with His will, we know the transformation is working. The wait no longer feels like punishment, it feels like preparation. We stop asking when and begin asking how. How can I grow in this? How can I reflect You more fully while I wait? And when His time finally comes, and it always does, we don't receive the answer the way we once imagined. We receive it with tears in our eyes and a new posture in our soul. We hold it gently, with reverence, knowing what it cost us to wait and what it cost Him to prepare it. We no longer see it as a transaction between God and us. We see it as a covenant, an unfolding of something sacred, designed not just to change our circumstances, but to reveal our calling. The blessing may look the same on the outside, but something in us knows it's deeper than that. It's not just a job, a healing, a restored relationship, or an open door. It's a marker of God's faithfulness through our formation. It's the tangible evidence of what He's been doing inside our spirit. And when we receive it, the transformation is visible, not just to us, but to everyone who watched us wait. They see the strength in our voice, the peace in our posture, the wisdom in our choices. They see that we didn't just receive something, we became someone. That is the power of divine timing. It does more than answer prayers, it rewrites hearts. There are many kinds of cries that rise from the human heart. Some are cries of desperation, loud, aching, and filled with the rawness of pain. Others are quiet sobs of surrender, released in solitude when the soul has no more strength to fight. But there is another kind of cry, one rarely spoken about, yet deeply sacred. It is the cry that comes when God's timing finally collides with years of waiting, wondering, and trusting through silence. It is not a cry of hopelessness. It is holy. It comes from the realization that what once felt forgotten was never overlooked, and what seemed delayed was always perfectly planned. When we've held on to promises through seasons of dryness, when we've worshipped, even when our prayers felt unanswered, when we've walked in obedience through invisible paths. The moment of fulfillment does something profound to the soul. It breaks us, but not in sorrow. It breaks us in reverence. We stand in the presence of what we've longed for, and it's not just the answered prayer that overwhelms us. It's the weight of realizing that God was never late. He was always on time and always with us. That kind of clarity cannot be expressed in words. It comes out in tears. These are tears that carry memories. Each drop holds a silent night we thought we wouldn't survive. Each tear is the echo of a prayer whispered in faith when nothing seemed to change. The cry that comes in the fullness of God's timing is drenched in both gratitude and humility. Gratitude because we finally see the evidence of His faithfulness. Humility because we realize just how limited our perspective was all along. We may have doubted. We may have complained. We may have grown weary and questioned everything. But when it finally arrives, when the season shifts and God opens the door, we are undone. Not because the blessing itself is more than we expected, but because of how He brought it. The timing is so precise. The moment feels so divine. The breakthrough fits into the cracks of our story with such accuracy that we are left breathless. That's when the holy cry rises. A cry that speaks what the heart cannot say. A cry that shakes us in the best kind of way. This cry is a release. It is the soul exhaling after holding its breath for too long. It is the spirit releasing the weight it carried in faith, the heaviness of expectation, the fear of being forgotten. It is joy and relief and reverence all mingled together. It is the sound of trust vindicated, of hope fulfilled, of prayers coming to life. And it is not just about the answer. It's about the presence of the one who sustained us while we waited. The cry honors the journey. It marks the end of a testing season and the beginning of a testimony. In that moment, everything makes sense, not because we understand every detail, but because we recognize the author. We see His fingerprints on the delays, His mercy in the closed doors, His wisdom in the timing. We remember how close we were to giving up and how He gave us just enough strength to endure. That cry becomes a witness. It declares without a word that God is good, that He is faithful, that His silence was never empty, that His promises are not vague hopes, but sacred appointments. This kind of cry does not fade quickly. It leaves an imprint. It softens the heart in a way that changes how we walk from that point forward. We begin to trust more easily, to wait with greater patience, to worship with deeper sincerity. We realize we don't need to see everything right away to believe that something is happening. We've seen what holy timing looks like. We've felt its arrival in the marrow of our bones, and we carry that sacred memory into every new valley we face. So when the tears come, and they will, let them fall without shame. Let them be your worship, your testimony, your offering. Let them wash over the years of struggle and baptize your soul in the reminder that you were never forsaken. Those tears are not weakness. They are the sacred overflow of a heart that trusted through the dark and has now seen the light. They are holy, and they are yours. God's timing is not random, nor is it careless. It is precise, intentional, and rooted in a love far deeper than we can comprehend. Every delay held purpose. Every silence carried weight. Every season of waiting was not just about what you were hoping to receive, but who you were being shaped to become. And now, as his timing draws near, your spirit will begin to feel it. Not just as an answer, but as a sacred unveiling. You will cry, not because you are broken, but because you are being made whole. Not from despair, but from divine realization. The tears that fall in that moment will be the language of your soul finally seeing that heaven had never been still, and God had never been absent. He was working all along, and his timing was always meant to move you to tears, not of pain, but of holy wonder.